And it's now Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. He's a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks for being with us this morning. A lot of this, as President Zelensky has said, is the result of aid from the United States. Billions of dollars worth of aid, ammunition, humanitarian aid, everything else over the last 7 months or so that the United States has provided. What do you make of the news over the last week or so of these gains and this sort of lightning speed counteroffensive by the Ukrainians?
Well, Willie, this is great news. The Ukrainians are making remarkable progress, both in the south, where they long signaled a counteroffensive in the Kherson region, and in the north, up near Kharkiv, where they've recaptured more than 3,000 square miles of Ukrainian territory from the Russian occupiers. As you said, this is in no small part due to the United States and our critical European allies delivering advanced weapons that are making a difference on the battlefield, ongoing financial support from the United States and our European partners and allies to the Ukrainian government and people, as well as their military. President Biden and his administration have asked that we provide another round of support to help the Ukrainians through the end of this year. They really needed to show quick progress on the battlefield before winter sets in. They've done that, and I'm optimistic about the path forward here. There's still a very tough war ahead. Russia remains a significant military opponent for the Ukrainians, but this is absolutely lifting the spirits of the Ukrainian people and solidifying bipartisan support here in Congress, Willie, for continuing our efforts in support of Ukraine.
Senator, Ukraine and Vladimir Putin obviously occupy a whole bunch of space, political, economic, emotional, with regard to the United States, NATO, and everything entailed in that. But my question to you is, are we paying enough attention to China?
We are trying to do both at the same time. Later today, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee will have a markup on a bill that has to do with Taiwan and our engagement in the Indo-Pacific and what it is we're doing in terms of U.S.-Taiwan policy, which obviously implicates our one China policy and U.S.-China policy. So we here in the Senate are continuing to work on both. You raise a good question. Later today, I'm also going to have a subcommittee hearing on foreign intelligence services and their efforts to get the private personal identifying information of U.S. nationals, average American citizens, as well as members of our military, law enforcement, and elected officials. Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska and I will be doing this hearing following yesterday's Judiciary Committee hearing, where a whistleblower from Twitter made it clear that Twitter is not investing enough in securing our data. Obviously, the Chinese are among the more aggressive foreign intelligence services, and in a world where so much of our lives now are carried out on social media platforms and so much of our data is available there, I do think that's a key part of our keeping an eye on developments, both with regards to China and the world.
Well, and of course, you talk about social media and the dangers to American democracy from social media and foreign interference. Reminds us all of 2016 when Facebook admitted internally to themselves that Russians used Facebook to spread disinformation and try to influence the election. Of course, Sheryl Sandberg got very angry at the whistleblower that came forward. But as a follow-up to that, we get reports now that $300 million was spent by Vladimir Putin to undermine democracies across the world. Of course, a lot of his focus on the United States. 2017 intel agencies all agreed that, let me get the exact wording here, that Vladimir Putin and Russia used active measures. Mike Pompeo, Dan Coates, Christopher Wray, General Ashley, all Trump appointees, all agreeing that Russia used active measures. Marco Rubio led the Senate Intel Committee report that said that Trump's 2016 campaign posed a grave threat to counterintelligence efforts against the United States of America. All of this, a lot of this leading up to your reaction to
well, Joe,
a $300 million play, while Trump supporters keep talking about a Russia hoax?
Well, it's clearly not a hoax, Joe. Russia under Vladimir Putin has spent hundreds of millions of dollars covertly and overtly trying to influence elections here in the United States and throughout Western Europe. There was a report of the Foreign Relations Committee, as well as the Intelligence Committee report you just referenced, that documented the many, many ways in which the Russians were engaged in known and overt influence activities. This additional recent report makes it clear that hundreds of millions of dollars more were spent by Vladimir Putin trying to divide the West, trying to shape our political cultures and the outcome of our elections. This is a hostile act by Putin against the West. We should have no illusions about who he is and what his goals are. He is an autocrat fighting democracy. His unprovoked and brutal invasion of Ukraine was to stop Ukraine from being a democracy on the doorstep of Russia. But this latest report about more than $300 million having been spent in covert influence operations by Russia is just a reminder that he has targeted the United States directly and our election infrastructure.
Yeah, Senator, finally, wanted to ask you, first of all, two quick things. What's your reaction on Lindsey Graham wanting to nationalize an abortion ban? Secondly, we've been talking about the unfortunate split screen yesterday where Joe Biden was going out talking about how great the Anti-Inflation Act was that he signed into law. And at the same time, we saw the stock market plummeting because inflation numbers are still hot. We can talk about the staffing error of putting the president out at that time if we want to, but let's talk about the things that working class, middle class Americans in Delaware care about, and that is inflation. How in the hell does the government cool it off?
Well, Joe, gas has gone down 90 days in a row. In Delaware, it's $3.38 a gallon on average today. And I think gas is probably the pressure point that most folks feel first. We still have more work to do to get inflation down further. But at the celebration at the White House yesterday, our president was reminding us that the Inflation Reduction Act is going to reduce prescription drug prices, health care prices, energy prices. There's a $300 billion down payment on reducing the deficit this year, and there's those significant additional measures to reduce the costs that most households feel, whether at the pharmacy or at the pump or in paying their monthly heating bills. I'm also struck that Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina has introduced a 15-week nationwide abortion ban. I think as Americans go to the polls in November, they'll see these two sharp contrasts. President Biden and the Democrats passing a fully paid-for bill that tackles the daily prices that matter to them, that tackles the climate crisis, that makes our country more competitive and more secure, and further efforts by a Republican leader to impose a nationwide abortion ban that would impact not just those states that have already at the state level adopted complete abortion bans, but that would impact states like Delaware and many other blue states that are protecting reproductive rights. This would overturn that. That makes it clear that if the Senate is retaken by the Republicans, this will likely see a vote in the coming year.
All right, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, thank you very much for being on this morning.
Thank you.